Well, we're continuing our study in the four priorities. Last week we talked about the centrality, the importance of the person of Jesus Christ. Today I want to deal with the subject of the big picture of the Christian life, or the life of the disciple of Jesus. I was reflecting back as I was thinking about this, and I came to know Jesus Christ when I was around, I think I was going into my 10th grade year of high school. And some buddies had asked me to go on a retreat with about 150 high school kids. This was down in Florida. And the last evening of that week, a man was speaking by the name of Ernie Gilmore, and he laid out the basics of who Christ was, what he did, why I needed Jesus Christ, and how to get in on that relationship. So I gave my life to Christ at that point. I'll never forget it. But as the years went on, the question that lingered in my mind was this: why does it take me so long to get better? Why do I still struggle? Why some of the things I used to do, I still do? Why do sometimes I feel like I'm taking one step forward and then two steps back? You ever had that experience? Well, no one had ever, to that point, helped me understand the process of the Christian life and how it worked, why I would still mess up. So in the chapter today, we talk about an illustration called the Beachhead illustration. And I know you've got it there before you, but I want to kind of talk it through and draw it out on the board here and maybe add a few thoughts to it. But I really want you to understand it and get it down so you can be encouraged, but also that you can share this with other people. This little illustration has changed my life. So let me dig in. In World War II, there were a series of islands in the South Pacific. These islands, there were actually a whole chain of islands. And so the Allies had banded together to reclaim these islands. So what they would do, and I can't draw the adequate pictures I need here, so you just have to take this by faith, but they would have an aircraft carrier, and the aircraft carrier would send an airplane out over the island to take an aerial reconnaissance or photographs of where the enemy was strong and where the enemy was weak on that island. Then they would come back and study the photographs and start what was called the softening up process, S-U-P, softening up process. They would bombard a portion of the island where they wanted to land, and what would happen is they would then bring in the artillery, the supplies, the troops, and so forth by boat, and establish what they called a beachhead. Now, because they had established a beachhead does not mean that they had overtaken the island. There was still an enemy there, but they had just simply been relocated. They called this the enemy held territory. The enemy held territory. So then what they would do is they would begin to invade the enemy held territory so as to be able to either capture or kill the enemy and therefore take over the island. Well, that was a process. You say, what in the world does that have to do with me and Jesus? It has everything to do with it. When Jesus Christ comes into your life, the first thing he does is he sets up a position in your life. He says, I want you to understand that when I invade you, the cross representing Christ and what he did for you, I set up a position in you, and it's forever. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I've had people come to me and say, well, John, I think Jesus came into my life, but he did his part, but I didn't do my part, so he left. Or I think he came in my life, and once he saw how bad I was, he said, man, I don't want any part of this, so I'm out of here. So he left. He departed. So, or variations on the theme I've heard from people. But the thing you need to understand is when Jesus Christ comes into your life, he says that relationship is secure. In other words, he's saying, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I'm with you. You couldn't kick me out if you want to. So, the question still lingered though. Even though I knew that, I guess I had this thought that, as it said in 2 Corinthians 5:17, that when you become a Christian, you become a brand new person. Well, I felt and sensed and saw some of that newness, but man, I had a lot of stuff popping its head up that reminded me of my life before I came to know Jesus Christ. And so I think, well, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe it didn't take. Maybe I wasn't sincere enough. All those things were looming around in my mind. But then someone shared this illustration with me, and then they pointed this out, that even though the position is secure, my condition still stinks. In other words, when Jesus Christ came into my life or comes in your life or anyone's life, he only sets up a beachhead. It's not a total takeover. I still have in my life an enemy-held territory. The rest of my life, until Jesus calls me home, there's going to be a struggle. Paul said it, and I think we reflected here in the book in Romans chapter 7, the J.B. Phillips paraphrase. He says, my own behavior baffles me. The very things I don't want to do, that's what I do, and the things I know I should do, I don't seem to have the ability or the power to pull them off. I understood that struggle, and maybe you do too. So, what I learned is that the Christian life is a process. A process whereby, number one, Jesus comes into my life, and then all the rest of my life, I am committed to grow. Now, the target of the Christian life, the goal of the Christian life, the bullseye of the Christian life is in Romans 8:29, that we be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. Translated, that we become like Jesus in every facet, in every phase of our lives. So I just simply wanted to point out to you today that when Christ comes into your life, there is a big picture you need to understand. He comes in, he sets up residence or a position in you. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. But this whole Christian life is a process of where he begins to work down in every arena and area of your life, the enemy-held territory, to begin to conquer that and to take that over. The Bible in Corinthians calls those strongholds. And all your life, until you go home to be with Jesus, you're going to be working on that enemy-held territory. Now let me just give you a couple final thoughts. That is, for example, as you look in the enemy-held territory, what's eating your lunch? What areas in your life? Could it be your lust life? Could it be the financial area of your life? Could it be your emotions? Maybe you have an anger problem. I don't know what it is. But all the different areas of your life, where do you struggle the most? Let me give you a couple hints. Number one, what is eating your lunch? Number two, identify it, name it. 3, give it to the Lord. 4, get help with it and get a plan to overcome it. Philippians 1:6 says it this way. He says, and I am sure that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on that day when Christ Jesus comes back again. He always does what he says he'll do.